All right, so you've imported your first photo session into Adobe Lightroom Classic, and now you need to go through and rate, sort, find the best images. So when you first come into Lightroom, you'll probably see the grid style, or it might be in the gallery view. Now, you can change these views by going down here to the bottom about left-hand side of your screen, right above that film strip. The two that you're going to need to use the most often is going to be your grid view and your loop view. Now, the reason we say loop view is that's going back to a time where we used film. And when we developed that film, we actually developed it and then we trimmed the film and we put them into these sleeves, this little plastic sheet protector that kept them organized. And in order to see them before we went into the darkroom and printed them onto really expensive papers, we would actually take what's called a loop. And this is like a little tiny magnifying glass, basically. And we would place it on top of our negatives on a light table that had light shining from below, and it would light through those negatives, and we would look at them with a loop and we'd be able to see, okay, these are the ones that we want to make into larger prints. And so we would mark those off. The grid view is very similar to what a contact sheet looked like when we would come out of the darkroom. Very small, very difficult to see. You click on the loop and it becomes much larger. Now you can actually see if your image is useful, see if your image is in focus, see if the colors are right, and then you can make adjustments from there. But right now I want you guys to just look through your images. Now you'll notice if you're looking down at my film strip, and again, if you can't see this, it's hidden. There's a little tiny arrow you need to find. It's in the center at the bottom of your screen. If you hover over it, it'll pop up momentarily. If you want to keep it there, just click it once. As you go through your images, so you're just going to click and go through, right? You're going to see the variations of the different poses, the different styling. I've gone through and already edited my images, so you'll see some color changes. You'll see I've taken my images into Photoshop and made adjustments. But as you go through, you want to mark these. So let's say you were just going through your very first round of checking on your images. You're going to go through and mark those with a 1 or a 2 or a 3. And as you do that, you're going to see the numbers appear at the bottom. So here you can see I have a 1 star on this image, 1 star here. Now, my organization system, a 1 star does not mean that it's a bad image. It just means it made it through my first cut. Images that don't have the 1 star on them are ones that I didn't approve to go through the next round. So we have no stars, then we have 1 stars. And then after I've gone through and found all of my 1 stars, I might go back through again and just look at those 1 stars and turn some of those into 2s, and then turn some of those into 3s. And I do this to cut down, to narrow. So if you'll notice, we have 410 photos in here. If you're doing a portrait session, whether it's a wedding or a senior portrait or an engagement or just a couple's photo shoot or a headshot, you are not going to be delivering 410 photos to that client. That is overwhelm for them because a majority of these images are all very similar, right? There's also ones where they're blinking. There's ones where they have their eyes open. There's ones where their pose is only just a tiny bit different than the last one, okay? Like here, we're not going to deliver these, 4 or 5 photos. We only want to find the best one. So your first job is to go through and narrow it down. Just go through your entire session and just hit the number 1 on your keyboard. And just hit it every time you find a photo that you think you like. Then you're going to go through and you're going to narrow it down again. So here, where it says filters off on the bottom right-hand side of my screen, if I click where it says filter, it'll open up a lot more filter options for me. And I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say, okay, I want to see all of my images that are, the rating is either greater than or equal to, and then I can choose my star rating. It's less than or equal to, or the rating is equal to. In this case, I'm going to go through and I'm just going to say the rating is less than or equal to a 2 because I want to show you guys how I went through. Now this is going to include the zeros, right? This is going to include the ones that I didn't actually choose. So if I go through, right, I wouldn't choose this one. It's underexposed. There isn't a pose. It's not even in focus. This one was really just me testing the lighting when I first got there. Again, testing the lighting, testing the lighting. We weren't set up yet. And then now we're starting to pose. But in the beginning of a session, your client is usually not super comfortable with you. So you need to get them to relax a little bit. Okay, so we had one, marked it with a 1, still not super happy with it, but marked it. The next one is a little bit better. We started to have a little bit more fun. I marked it with a 1 again, but later on, I went through and I marked it with a 2. So if I said rating is equal to a 1, you'll see these were all the 1s, and I went through those 1s and I marked the best ones up to 2s. When it becomes a 2, it's no longer in this category anymore. So we go to a 2. These were all 1s at one point that became 2s. I narrowed it down again. I moved them to 3s. Here you can start to see the ones that became 3s and then the ones that I edited. So at that point I start using color. The number 6 is red. As you can see over here, it goes up to 5. 6 becomes red, 7 becomes yellow, 8 becomes green, 9 becomes blue, and it continues going through. And this allows you to have both a star rating and a color rating at the same time, and you'll create your own system as well. Generally speaking, you really only need to start with the rating a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5. And keep in mind, you can click that 1 as many times as you want to on as many images as you want. It is not just saying you only have those 5 images. And then filtering them so that you can find the images that you want. So let's say you wanted to only take the 3-star rating green images. You would then click on the first one. You can hold down Shift and click on the last one. So I just clicked on the first one, scrolled over. I'm going to hold down Shift and click on the last one. You can also do Control A, and that's going to select all of them. And then you can export those images. So for example, if your teacher is saying that you could only submit 5 images, you would choose the best 5 images, and you would take those 5 with those selected, so you would probably number all the way up to number 5 so that you can narrow it down to your top 5. Grab those 5 images, and then you're going to tell it to export. And when you export, you're going to do something very similar to what we did in the first round when we brought the images in. You don't want to export them to the original folder. That's going to make it hard for you to find them. So once again, you want to go to Specific Folder. So here, it might have said Same Folder as Original Folder, or Choose Folder Later, or Desktop, or My Pictures Folder, right? You want to tell it Specific Folder. You want to choose that folder, so you're going to go into your desktop. You might have inside your Lightroom folder, you might create a new folder and call that Exports. You might have an Exports folder on your desktop, like I do here. So I'm going to click on the Exports folder out here. And then you want to create a subfolder. If you just put your exports into that folder and you forget to rename it and it comes out as untitled, or it comes out as the last file you submitted, it's just going to write over those old files. So you want to create a subfolder. So in this case, I made a subfolder called Finals Mackenzie. It's up to you what you want to call these folders. This is your organization, but you want it to be clear should somebody else need to access your files what they're looking for. So you want to get into a habit of naming them the same thing. So again, this could be the project title and then the word export, or the project title and the word finals. The next part is we're going to rename. And again, we're going to go to custom settings. So yours might have just said file name, but we're going to go edit. Here's where you have an opportunity. When we brought them in, we renamed them to be a very specific naming. So this should become really easy. We're going to do the same thing. Originally, we put them in as P2 underscore your name underscore the title of the project. In this case, it's my client's name, and then a sequence number. On export, you might want to have your images show up in a very specific order. That's something that we would do in collections, but when we go to export it, you might want it to show up with a new sequence number. It's just a good habit to have the same type of thing set up in here. Instead of saying custom text underscore sequence and that being it, you have to write in everything every time. We're going to go P2 underscore your name underscore, this is where you put in that custom text, underscore and then that sequence number again. And again, 3 digits. Even if you're only turning in 5 photos, I highly recommend doing the sequence with 3 digits. It's just easy. Now, part of the other reason why I recommend putting that sequence number on here and renaming the files when you export is because sometimes clients will see that one of their images is numbered number 354, but you're only giving them 25 images. And they go, well, what happened to the other 325 images? Where are those images? And you say, well, I narrowed them down because you don't need to look through all of those. That's just going to cause another headache, another conversation. You don't want to have to show every single image to your client, because ultimately they're still going to end up choosing the same ones that you chose 9 times out of 10. So rename that final. Plus, that's also going to allow for you to have control over the organization, the way that people see your images, which is going to be really important later on. I usually tell it to sharpen for screen, but I don't really touch any of these other pieces here. The resizing to fit is if you're putting it onto the web, or if you have very specific height and width ratios that you need it to have. But if you're going to need to resize your image, you want to do that in Photoshop. You don't want to do it on the export page. And then this is where you could add a watermark, but that's a whole nother video at a whole nother time. Once you've gotten to this point, you're going to click on export, and now you've exported your first set of images. In the next video, we're going to talk about how to export a contact sheet.